Hey everyone, I'm Tommy Canelli and welcome to Before the Lights podcast, the show to find out how those in sports, music, and entertainment made their mark. Please check out the website, beforethelightspod.com, and check us out on Instagram at beforethelightspod. Subscribe to the show and share it with everyone you know. All right, everybody, get a coffee, grab a drink, maybe a nice glass of vino right now. Tell your family, friends, neighbors, and strangers it's time to have an in-depth conversation with our guest. Today's show is brought to you by daviesgirlsphotography.com. Check them out or reach out via email. We have all thankfully moved on from the days of Sears and J.C. Penney portraits, or at least I hope you have. Do you guys remember those soft focus glam shots or the awkward family photos your mother insisted on you taking? I'm sure we all have a few of those that hopefully won't ever see the light of day. Times have changed, thankfully. So if you have an idea or vision for your first or 10th photo shoot, Davies Girls Photography can help bring your idea to print. To discuss your next idea, check them out at daviesgirls.com or on Instagram at Davies Girl Photography. My guest today is the only coach in college basketball history with 9 first-team All-Americans in his first 11 years of any level. Career record of 410-79, 10 Region 4 titles in 14 seasons, as well as being named Coach of the Year 10 times in the NJCAA. He's also the 2017 College Insider's Jack Bennett Man of the Year, head coach of the South Suburban Bulldogs, and a very good friend of mine, John Pigatti, better known as Coach P. JP, how are you, bud?
Great, Tommy. How are you today? It's great to be with you.
Doing well, and thanks for being on the show. So we're going to go through your little journey to where you are now.
It's a long journey.
Well, okay, we're going to take a long journey to where you are. Let's back up to when you were a child. Tell me your first memory of basketball as a kid.
Well, my first memory of basketball as a kid was when I was at we had a great high school coach, 2 coaches here. They were legends. They're actually in the Hall of Fame in the state of Illinois. Bob Kemp and Dolph Stanley. Dolph Stanley was at Rockford Boylan. Bob Kemp was at Rockford East. And so what happened was I went to their camp. And my wife has a picture of my room, Tommy. I have these old dirty Chuck Taylors on, and I weigh about 102 pounds, and I'm skinny. And they said, "You got a lot of energy. You're really going to do well. Work on. They'll give you the picture, and then they give you a little eval."
Right.
Oh yes, it was a great picture. And before my mother passed away, she gave it to my wife, and my wife put it in our bedroom, and she's got it framed and everything else. So that was my first going to a basketball camp and really starting to like playing basketball when I went to this camp that was run by Dolph Stanley and Bob Kemp. So
you have a daily reminder of what that was like back then. So
every day, so my guys complain about shoes. I go, "You should see me in my Chuck Taylors, baby." And they were dirty too, because we didn't have, like kids these days, they want clean shoes. No, these things were dirty, baby, but they were.
JP as a hooper, talk me through this. What kind of player were you?
Oh, I was a tough one, boy. I could shoot it, couldn't guard anybody, be great at top of a 2-3 so, but would shoot it every time I could get it. Had a lot of energy to me.
You still have energy to this day.
Yeah, we're trying. We're getting older, but we're still trying to kick that energy in.
So how did you get started with the 5th grade girls as a coach in Illinois?
Okay, so I was going to high school, and I played freshman basketball, and I was going to play, and I played golf, and I played baseball, ran track. I was doing all these sports, and then when Dolph Stanley, my high school coach or varsity coach at Rockford Boylan, retired, I sort of, didn't partake in basketball anymore. And I went to a school named St. Peter's Cathedral High or junior, or actually junior high. It was actually a whole school. St. Peter's Cathedral School was K, or actually first grade through eighth grade, and so they needed an eighth grade coach. And so myself and my buddy decided hey, we'll help out, we'll do that. And so I became a fifth grade girls coach, and then that was my junior year in high school. And then my senior year in high school, the girls moved up to sixth grade. So I coached them again. And then it was fifth to sixth grade basketball back then. So they were sixth graders, and I stayed with them. We brought in some other fifth graders. And so I coached those girls for those 2 years when I was going to high school. And then when I went to college, I coached another grade school, actually, that was on the campus of the University of Dayton Holy Angels School.
Gotcha. When you got to college, so let me back up here. You went to Dayton for golf, correct?
Yes, played golf at Dayton, and then I liked basketball. I was really sort of like coaching the kids, and I wanted to do something in winter months, and besides sit around and be a college partier and everything else. So Holy Angels School was right on the campus of the University of Dayton, and so I went down there. They needed a sixth grade basketball coach. And so I got the job as a sixth grade basketball coach and coached them. We had a great year. They won championship for sixth grade year. Moved up to fifth grade. Moved up to sixth grade with them. Then went to seventh grade. And then my senior year in college, I was going to be the eighth grade coach, but they had a guy that had been there forever. He's a Cub Scout leader, been a teacher there for 20-some years, always coached the eighth grade team. So I really wasn't going to be able to take his job. And so I had a really good player, Tommy. Todd Jones was his name. He was a great player. It's a great fit to sixth grade, seventh grade player, boy. He could score. So Todd, I had a friend of mine that was a couple of my friends that I was going to college with were graduates at Alter High School in Kettering, Ohio. And actually, Ted Harris was a player in the University of Dayton's basketball team on scholarship there. Ted played at Alter. So, and I was friends with him. So they talked to the coach. They said, hey, you need to take this guy on, John, because we got this Todd Jones. Todd can be a great player for you another year. So I ended up helping out with the freshman team, was assistant varsity coach my senior year. And then Todd came with us in my first graduate season that I had there. Todd came with us as well. So I was there for 2 years after that.
Okay, so you graduated from Dayton in 85.
Yeah.
First coaching job was in 87 at Elmhust.
Yeah, so once I left Alter High School and I was through with got my business teacher's certificate and everything else, the Elmhust College job came open. It was near home. It was because I'm from Rockford, Illinois originally. And so Elmhurst Chicago's only 90 miles from Rockford. So I said, well, you know what? I'll apply for this job. The coach actually there, Jim Weitzel, who's now the head coach of the University of Buffalo, actually was at our state tournament game because we had some great players at Alter High School. Matter of fact, Jeff Graham went and played in the NFL. Bill Ewell, Mike Crotty, they all played the University of Dayton. They were all players on our team as well. And so Jim was at the game, so he was familiar with me as being an assistant coach at Alter. And so I got hired at Elmhust College Division III school outside Chicago. So I made the move in 87 and went to Elmhust College from where I was coaching in high school.
All right, so explain to the listeners what duties are at a D3 school, your first coaching job. What were you in charge of?
Well, it was a part-time job. I would only be there in the afternoon, so I had to get a real job. And so I was working from 9 to 1 at ADP, Automatic Data Processing. And back then is when telemarketing was really popular. That's before everybody had cell phones and everybody didn't want to be bothered by telemarketers. So I would set up appointments for our payroll managers to go out and talk to different companies about taking our payroll service and all other services that we provided. So I worked there 9 to noon, and then or 9 to 1 actually, and then would go to Elmhust after that. In Elmhust College, I was in charge of everything, like recruiting, scouting, practice, on the floor coaching, getting the gym ready, getting locker rooms ready, getting equipment ready. Everything you had to do, I was involved with as a assistant coach there. And actually, Tommy, my first year there, because it was a very good story. You didn't make a lot of money, and living in Chicago, very expensive town.
Right.
And so my head coach said, the more guys you bring in, the more free meals you can get, because you can have free lunch and free dinner if you bring these guys on campus visits. I had 82 players. I went down to the city of Chicago or in the suburbs and carted to campus that year. Used to bring like carloads of guys so I could get free lunch and free dinner. I had to pay for it.
You were stockpiling dinners.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And you were involved.
Like in the springtime, I was never hungry. Never.
And you were involved with the Michael Jordan camp, correct?
Yeah. So what happened was my first year there, Michael Jordan's company, actually Ed Janka, who was in charge of Michael Jordan and Nike, not in charge of Nike, but in charge of his camp through Nike. And then he also did all these championship clinics and Nike clinics, coaching clinics for years. Ed came and approached our gym about having the Michael Jordan camp come to Elmhust College because of our proximity to O'Hare Airport and all the international and all the kids from all over the world. So we actually had the Michael Jordan camp there for the 2 years that I was there.
Nice.
And then because of Ed Jenkins' best friend was Tony Baroni, who was the head coach at Creighton University at the time. And so I actually worked Creighton's basketball camp my second summer being at Elmhust College after the Michael Jordan camp, and that's how I moved on to my next job.
Creighton from 89 to 91. And what was the jump like for you going from D3 to D1? Was there an adjustment? Did you have more responsibilities at Creighton?
Well, you know what? I had more responsibilities when it came to academics, because then you were what you call the restricted earnings coach. You could only make so much money. And after we actually, I was a president of the assistant coaches committee, and later on, and we sued the NCAA. We made some money for the assistant coaches that had their pay restricted. But what happened was, I was in charge of scouting. Back then, you could live scout opponents and fly out to see opponents. I was in on-campus recruiting. I was in charge of all the academic monitoring and running the study halls. And we used to have a breakfast check where I had to sit in the cafeteria from 7 a.m. to about 8:30 a.m. Waiting for the guys to get up before the classes to come and report to me as they went to breakfast. And so that they would get up, get breakfast, be up, and then go to their classes. I had a lot more responsibilities because I was there pretty much all day, every day.
Elmhust and Creighton so far, not hearing a lot of on-the-floor coaching, but a lot of the dirty work, so to speak, that assistant coaches do to make a head coach.
I was actually all on-floor coaching at Elmhust College. Because I was the only assistant coach we had. So I was doing a lot of stuff, and I was the junior varsity coach at Elmhust. Then at Creighton, I was the third assistant, so I was on and actually ran pretty much all the scout teams throughout the year, and would do a lot of individual improvement, a lot of conditioning, a lot of skill development with the guys, and did a lot of on-floor coaching. So everything I've had has been involved with on-floor coaching.
Okay. So you meet Tony Baroni, who becomes one of your mentor. Tell me what Tony meant to you.
Tony meant a lot to me because he pretty much taught me how the business works. For the 2 years were actually 3 years, because then after Creighton, we went to Texas A&M. He took the job there. I went with him, and he just understood the business, taught me the business side of it, taught me from, understanding about fundraising, about the boosters, about how it is with players, and understanding the business side of the how important scouting reports was, how important the coaching was, how important community service was, because I was in charge of all of our community service as well, and how to make these guys better young men through academics and through the community and on the floor and off the floor as well, and all their monitoring of as well. So I pretty much learned the entire basketball coaching business, which is a lot more than just people seeing the floor of guy coaching a game. It's the individual relationships you make and the solving of problems that you have with these kids and helping these guys to be better young men and monitoring their everyday lives, and which is what the business is all about. And so I learned a ton about the business through him.
All the stuff that people don't see off the court. And as a fellow junior college coach myself, you and I coach against each other. We understand that back room, so to speak, of all the stuff, the many hats that coaches have to wear. And if you're not familiar and you just get thrown into the fire with that can be overwhelming for a young coach for sure.
Yeah, it could be. And that's why I had a great mentor, because I would make mistakes and he would let me know about it. And it was not easy one.
Yeah.
So, and I appreciate that, because what that's made me do now is really understand that all the little things that are involved in coaching, every little thing matters, from being on time to study hall, to getting your work done on time, to turning your papers in on time, to preventative management, knowing problems before they happen. And actually that has carried over to my head coaching as well, as now I'm really preventative management when it comes to trying to solve problems before they happen and try to avoid problems before they happen as well.
So you followed Tony to Texas A&M in 91 for a year, but did you have a chance to stay at Creighton, or were you just going with Tony no matter what?
Yes, I could have stayed at Creighton, but the new head coach there was Rick Johnson, who was an assistant coach with me. We were roommates on the road, and I just felt that for my betterment of a coach is I needed another year of experience with Tony, so that's why I went to Texas A&M with him.
Okay. So you get your master's in 93 from Creighton, and here's my question. At that point in time, you were at Western Michigan from 92 to 94, correct?
Yeah.
So how does
how does that happen? How does that happen?
Yeah, with tech savvy JP, which we know is not one of your strongest qualities. How did you get your master's? Did you go online back in those days, or what?
Oh yes. Well, what happened was when I was at Creighton, okay, and basketball is a show there at Creighton, which everybody knows that now, especially now with how good they've been. We were very good too. Went to the NCAA tournament. I had a couple of. I was getting my master's in business administration as well. Lived with a law student, and really made friends with a bunch of guys that were in law school at the time. I pretty much hung out with them when I wasn't with the basketball team. I had some great professors there that I went to class with. So when I left for Texas A&M, I arranged with them that I would continue my master's work and back then it wasn't, email. We didn't have email back then.
No.
It wasn't like you could email your work and stuff like that back then. So I would have to type up papers, do papers, mail them. I don't even know. We had FedEx back then, to be honest with you. So we'd have to maybe fax things to them, send stuff through the mail through them. So pretty much for those couple of years, I was doing work and research papers and studying with all of my and sending stuff back to Creighton. Now, when I was at Texas A&M, I took classes as well at Texas A&M that transferred over to Creighton to be able to help me with my master's as well. So besides online learning, or not really online learning because it wasn't online, but just distance learning, I guess you could call it.
Right.
I was also taking other classes as well at Texas A&M that transferred back to Creighton to get my MBA.
So you continue to climb up the ranks, so to speak, more and more, duties. You're doing more things. You get your master's. You're at Western Michigan. What was your title like at Western Michigan? And did you have another expanded role from when you were at Texas A&M?
Yeah. So when I went to Creighton, or actually to Western Michigan, then I became, besides on-floor coaching, I also was being able to go on the road and recruit. So because of the restricted earnings code, you could not recruit off campus. So I was not allowed to do that. So I then my expanded role besides coaching, scouting, community stuff, everything else, budgeting, scheduling, everything else that happened. Then now I got on the road recruiting, which was your next step in your progression process at that time of being able to move up the ladder is now getting on the road recruiting experience and going out and evaluating players. And back then and there, we didn't have a limited summer. Back then and there, our recruiting period in the summer went July 1st to July 31st. We were going 31 straight days, had a big old suitcase, had to do laundry on the road, different old. I didn't come back home at all. On the road recruiting was the last step for me to be able to become a head coach.
And you're at Western Michigan. You meet your wife.
Yeah.
And were you able to support yourself from your pay at Western Michigan yet, or are you still having to do a couple jobs?
Now it was a full-time job because on-floor coaches were full-time and had full-time benefits and everything else. So I was a full-time coach there, and so my salary was good enough that I did not have to have another job.
You move on from Western Michigan. You go to St. Joe's in Rensselaer, Indiana, which now I believe does no longer have athletics. You're there
wasn't because of me, by the way. but I went to St. Joe's. Actually, for about from I believe it was October. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, from October to April, and it was sort of like the associate head coach there because the head coach there, Bill Bland's father, was ill, lived in California, so he wanted an experienced guy that would be able to take over the team and coach them when he was gone, be able to go back and forth from California when he was seeing his seriously ill father.
So you're there for 1 year, and then how did you end up at Akron? Because you get to Akron, you have some stability. You're there for 5-6 years.
Yeah, so what happened was when I was at the University of Dayton going to school there, Don Donner was the head coach. He's a Hall of Fame coach, and been great. Matter of fact, he got Dayton to the Final Four, and actually got Dayton to when I was going to school there to the West Regional Finals. And Coach Donner's in the Hall of Fame, and a great coach. I took his class, and actually, he was sort of like another mentor to me because he sort of started me and talking to me about what it was like to be able to coach on the college level. His assistant coach, Dan Hipsher, was the head coach at University. Just got the head coaching job at the University of Akron. A player of mine at Alter High School, Brian Donaher, was his assistant coach at Stetson University. And then when he got the job, he moved from Stetson to Akron, and Brian went with him. And so Brian and I knew each other from the road, and when I was at Western Michigan. And I also knew Dan Hipsher was very impressed with how I just kept moving up the ladder, and so was Coach Donner. So when he got the job, I talked to him about the job, and he offered me the job to be able to come with him and try to build the University of Akron job because it was at an all-time low. And so I went with him for 6 seasons at the University of Akron.
Here's, I think, puts college coaching in perspective of what maybe people don't understand, where how coaches are trying to survive outside of what you see on the floor. Around that time period of Akron, the TV show Sopranos kicks off. You have a great Sopranos story about how you were able to watch the show. Share that with the listeners.
Well, no. So what happened was after I went to the University of Akron, and I was there for 6 seasons, and then I left to take a year sabbatical, help my buddy out. And then Bo Ellis, who was a great player at Maurice Bo Ellis, who was a great player for Marquette in 1977 National Championship team, played for Al McGuire. Bo was in his final year of his contract at Chicago State. I was from Chicago, actually, Rockford. We knew each other very well, and so he asked me to come along and try to help him save his job. I went to Chicago State after I left Akron and left one high school. I was there for a year. And when I went to Chicago State, my wife stayed back in Akron. She had a great job back then. We just had our first child. That was when the NCAA started that mandatory day off. So
yep, I remember that.
Come and like after practice on the day before the day off, you can go home, spend a couple days with your family, then come back. So I did that. But I was not going to get a place that was so expensive in Chicago. I said, you know what? I'm not getting a place. Bo said, you know what? I said, can I just stay in the locker room? Now, in the locker room, okay, we had a couch, very nice couch, and we had a TV that we didn't have cable in the locker room at that time, okay? And the only channels we got were the Spanish channels. So I couldn't even understand anything that was going on.
Did you learn Spanish?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. See, how about that?
So you're living in the locker room at Chicago State.
Yeah. So my buddy, Dave Filipovich, who was just recently the head coach at Air Force.
Yeah.
Dave was, I believe at that time, Dave was at Eastern Michigan's assistant coach. Him and his wife felt sorry for me. So back in the day when we had VHS, which nobody that listening to this podcast will probably understand what a VHS tape was. Okay?
They can Google it.
Yeah, Google it, okay? But it was big, and it would always get stuck in the VCRs that we had. And Google what a VCR is, too, okay? But so Dave would send me weekly. He would tape The Sopranos for me and then send me that so I could watch like the Soprano episodes for that week. He would send that to me so I could watch that in my office while I was living in the locker room there. So I got a chance to be a huge Sopranos fan because of VHS.
You were excited waiting for that shipment every week to watch Sopranos.
Oh, every time I got it.
1996 to 2001, you become president of the National Assistant Basketball Coaches Committee. At that point in time, Coach, did you think possibly you may be a lifer as an assistant coach?
No, I thought maybe that would help me get a job, but it didn't. But I thought maybe with the connections that I would make, you know, I could move up in the profession. And, you know, because, I mean, as the president of the Assistant Coaches Committee, pretty much when I was there, they were talking about stopping summer recruiting. They were talking about the restricted earnings thing. And we actually put a lawsuit together that actually got paid several millions of dollars and reimbursed a lot of guys that are now head coaches in the profession, got them paid for what because they were restricted earnings, got them paid their fair wage, got a check reimbursed to them because of what they did, how many years they were restricted earnings. But I think that was the biggest thing that we did. But the second biggest thing was we saved summer recruiting. The NCAA was actually going to cut summer recruiting. And it wasn't because of all the cheating that is going on you talk about now. It was because of all the wear and tear and how all these people were profiting off of what the NCAA thought should be profited of. It should be all in and that's when AU started getting very popular. So they were going to cut it off. So then myself and several powers to be and several head coaches came together. We put this proposal together. Myself and a couple of assistant coaches that were with me on my committee had to go present in front of the NCAA a whole scenario of what the positives were and why summer recruiting should be saved. And actually, that is when they started the restricted days. They saved summer recruiting, but then started restricting the days to make it not just be for a whole entire month.
I was just going to say that was the biggest problem.
Yeah, but I mean, you're talking. I mean, I was on the phone constantly with Mike Krzyzewski, with Jim Calhoun at the time, Bob Huggins, Bill Self, every big time coach that was there at the time, from Dean Smith to Roy Williams, who was at Kansas at the time. All those big time guys that were way back then. I used to have contact with them all the time, and they would always call me talking about, what the assistant coaches are thinking and everything. Because we were the largest body of coaches, and I was the president of them for a long time, and not sure what's happening with them right now, but we were pretty powerful at that time.
So summer recruiting, obviously, you're gone for a whole month. And back then there was no cell phone, so there had to be issues with communication, and that's just a grind for a month. So that did need to be shortened up. But if you would talk about maybe some of those communication barriers you had to overcome before cell phones.
Well, before cell phones, we used to have to wait in line at gyms, okay, to call recruits, and we would have to wait in line at a payphone so that we could coaches would make calls to their recruiter to their perspective. They might be calling home. They might be calling recruits. Okay, everything. So you'd have to wait in line. You might be missing games because you're waiting in line to call somebody. Back then and there, you used to be able to write notes and give those to the AAU coach to be able to give to the players. So after a game, there might be a line of 20 coaches handing individual handwritten notes to the coach to be able to give to the certain player as well. You would also have to, if you were driving on the road, stop at gas stations and look for one of those payphones that would have the long extended cord from the phone so that you could put that in your car, roll your window up, especially if it was below zero out, and be able to talk on the phone that way. So, and then also be able to find a hotel that would allow you to make long distance calls so that you'd be able to call your recruits as well. So it was not easy when we were recruiting, not being able to use. There was no cell phones. You had to use pay phones and regular landline phones, which nobody knows what that is.
Yeah, you don't see the Superman booths anymore, and you don't get charged for long distance calls at hotels.
No.
How did AAU change recruiting then, in your opinion?
Well, I think AAU changed recruiting because it allowed a lot more kids to be recruited. I think, when you go to a game now and there's like 100, like you go to the national tournament or AAU tournament, you go to a big time AAU event and there's 100 teams, you figure there's probably 2,000 to 3,000 players that are there if there's a couple hundred teams there. So you get a chance to watch games all day, watch several guys play, and watch several hundreds of players a day play, to be honest with you, because you're not going to be able to see all couple thousand, but that are assembled in that one venue. But you go to court one, watch team A and B play. Then maybe you run over and watch team F and G play over at court 5. But you get a chance to see a multiple players, a variety of players, numerous players in a short amount of time.
After Chicago State, you go to Kent State for a year, then you go over to St. Francis, PA for 2 years, and you find out that the South Suburban College job is open. Talk to me about the interview process and how that came about.
Well, when South Suburban College came open, I had some friends that were actually in the junior college system out here. In fact, Dave Heiss, good friend of both you and mine, who you are a good friend of ours, who was at Waubonsie. I used to recruit a lot of his players, and he told me about this job. And he knew that I was looking to be a head coach. At that particular time, my father was several days away from home, to be honest with you, because of where we were located. But I went to interview here at South Suburban College. So talking to the athletic director of St. Francis, PA, Mr. Krimmel, he actually was an associate athletic director at Penn State, was there forever. He's just retired. His son is actually the head coach there now, and they're very good, close friends. And he gave me great advice. He said, John, when you go there, because at the time, the job was a part-time job. So I'm thinking, well, if I take this head coaching job, which I wanted to be a head coach, wanted to move back home, this is a place that's in between where Rockford and my wife's from Kalamazoo, Michigan, where I met her at Western Michigan that we mentioned earlier. So the job was sort of right in between both places. So he goes, John, if you really want that job, make them hire you full-time. Show them the advantage of what you could do for them. So if it's a part-time job, make them see what you could do for them on a full-time basis. So when I came to interview for the job, knowing that was a part-time job, I talked to them about, what I could do for them, what I could help maybe academically. I spent a lot of time visiting with them about the academics. At the end of the job, everything went great. I hop in my car and I'm heading back towards Pennsylvania. I'm on the expressway, and Sue Panther, who I owe a lot to my career, she's now retired, but she was the vice president here. She calls me back up, says, "John, turn around." I said, "Why?" She goes, "John, turn around. We're going to make you an offer. We're going to make this thing full time. Here's what we're going to do for you. So we want you to come back." So I actually come back. Everybody that was in the interview process had stayed. And so I get back like 45 minutes, half hour later, come back, turned around, had to pay 2 tolls. I should still get reimbursed for that. Still haven't got it because I went through one.
Still worrying about the toll pay.
Yeah, I'm still worried about that toll that I had to pay to go back.
But you got the full-time job and an offer you couldn't refuse.
It was 60 cents, by the way. I still want that back at the time. Now that toll's like $3.60. But so at the time, I come back. She goes, "This is what we're going to do. We're going to make you manager of athletic recruiting, retention, and transfer. This is how much we're going to pay you. And and this could be your stipend of head coaching jobs. Here's your total package." And so I had mentioned to her, I said, "Well, I'm going to need to bring that back to talk to my family, talk to my wife." So she says, "Okay." As I went to Pennsylvania for the next week, she kept calling me, all right? And the price kept going up and up and up. So it was in May.
That covered the toll.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. And I said, just add 60 cents on to whatever you're doing. But, so it was in May. So when my daughter was young, and so we said, you know what? And my son was just born. I said, let's we're going to take a trip to Disney World. I said, so we're going to go to Disney World. So she comes with the final offer when I'm outside the ride at a small world in Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida. And I accept the job there. Talked to my wife. She said, "Yes, let's do it." We did it, and then we hopped on the small world ride with the kids. So I took my first head coaching job outside at Disney World, outside. It's a small world after all, that ride there.
And that song just repeats over and over in your head.
Over and over in my head.
19 years. 19 years as an assistant coach. You get your first head coaching job. You've been there now 14 seasons. What's been your biggest challenge at South Suburban College?
Well, the challenge is right now is the biggest challenge is that our school is a one-building school. It has a gym that's off. It's a nice gym. It's got nice bleachers, but it's only on one side. It's got a nice floor. Our weight facility is fair. Our locker room facility is fair. But the biggest challenge is being able to recruit here to this as opposed to on campuses and the campuses that are around. Even some of these other junior colleges that are here outside Chicago have beautiful campuses and beautiful rec centers and multiple buildings. And so that's been a challenge, as well as I think what has helped us is that our winning has sort of offset all the limitations that our program has. Now with our school being cut, they cut us scholarships and everything else, and it's just been it's going to be a grind here coming up with because of the lack of funds that we have here as well.
Winning covers up a lot of things, and you've been very successful as a head coach and even as an assistant coach. But I'm curious, what is your personal definition, maybe not coaching, but personal definition of success?
Well, I think the personal definition of success is number one is how many guys, about 95% of our players that have gone through here have gotten 4-year scholarships to go someplace. And so all of our guys that have really done the job academically, okay, have gotten scholarships to go somewhere. So what's nice is that those young men do not have student loans afterwards, after they're done with school.
That's fantastic.
And a lot of them, most of them, I would say out of that 95%, I'd say another 90% of them have their bachelor's degrees as well. it's nice to see that these young men. I see a lot of them come back. They have jobs. Some of them have their own businesses. Some are already married, have kids, supporting their own families. We've had several guys that have played professionally as well. It's been very nice to see what's happening with these young men after they leave here.
Two more things, and I'm going to let you go, Coach. First one is, what's your advice to someone who's a young assistant coach like you were, just starting out? What's your advice to them?
Well, I think the world is such a now type of world, and what's good for me now, like what I want to be this now, and I really think that the coaching profession is going to get back to, here in the next couple of years, back to the old school ways where guys that pay their dues, guys are going to hire them. I would think that someone's got to do a lot of work in the summertime. I think you've got to, if you want to get into college coaching, especially, you've got to work camps. You got to go around and work different summer camps all over the country. And then I think you've got to continue to network and make a lot of connections that way. And it's not so much, guys have players, but I think guys that are really working hard and really doing their job and not just being labeled as a recruiter, not being labeled as a workout guy, not being able to do everything else. I think they have to start from the ground level and understand and do all the little things that are part of this coaching process, from doing the laundry to getting locker rooms ready, to practice planning, to individual workouts, to scheduling, to helping team travel. Every little thing that you can do. I think guys have got to try to do that to really boost their understanding of what it takes to be a successful college basketball coach.
And you brought up the last question I have for you, which I was kind of hoping you would go there, and you did. So you said work camps, and I was going to ask about camps. How would a young coach get involved with working camps nowadays?
Well, I think they've got to apply. I think they've got to look at a lot of these different individual camps, and are looking for guys to help out even with these exposure camps that they have. Even the exposure camps right now, just helping coach a team or help do the clock or something that way where you're around coaches that you can make contact. So maybe you never coached before, you want to get into coaching, so you work the clock at a event, and then you meet a coach who has a basketball camp. So you say, "Hey, can I work your camp?" And then he allows you to start working camp, and it just blossoms. And it just, the more people you meet, the more opportunities you have to do things, to be able to make more contacts in the summertime and be able to work exposure camps and exposure events and that type of thing, which will lead to working summer camps and be able to prove some of your worth with your on-floor coaching as well.
Last thoughts, Coach?
You know what? It's a great profession. It's not for everybody. It's not for, especially with the entitlement phase going on with the world today and all these young kids. You really got to understand why you want to be in it. Don't be in it for the glory, because there's a lot less glory than what you get that's glorified about it. Okay, and you do a lot of stuff that is not glamorized, and so you need to understand that first. If you're in it to just be on the floor coaching and getting the success level, and think you're going to be a guy that's going to be a coach and your team's going to win it all, and you're going to get all this praise and everything else, that's not going to happen. Okay, you need to understand that the unglorified things have to be done first before you can get your glory in this profession.
Coach, I appreciate you being on the show. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Tommy. I appreciate it.
Thanks to John Pigatti for being on the show, and I got a little surprise for John here coming up, but make sure you subscribe and review and rate the show, especially on Apple Podcasts. We hope you enjoy Before the Lights Pod. For more show notes, check out the website, beforethelightspod.com, and follow us on Instagram at Before the Lights Pod. check out the Extra 5 on Patreon. And John, for being a guest on the show, you are invited to be a guest of mine, free of charge, to play Reflection Bay Golf Club at Lake Las Vegas here in Vegas next time you're here. It's a Jack Nicklaus signature design located in the heart of Lake Las Vegas. It's one of the top 100 courses in the nation that the public can play. It played host to the Wendy's 3-Tour Challenge from 1998 to 2007. So, JP, next time you're in town, bring your sticks. We're going to go out to Reflection Bay, my man.
Well, Doug, I really appreciate it. That's a great place. I've heard great things about it, and looking forward to playing with you as well. That'll be a lot of fun. Thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you for listening to Before the Lights. I'm Tommy Canale, and we will talk to you next time